Patrick Wheeler, Jason Elmquist. It's a Friday. Levi Peckinpah's in the house as well.
Yes, sir.
Levi, what's going on, buddy?
Man, I'm glad it's Friday. It's been a very long weekend. It's a couple steps closer to college football for Oklahoma State college football and also for a little bit of NFL.
We made it. We made it to football. I know this is... It doesn't feel... It's not week one to be in high school.
Bite your tongue. We have not made it to our football yet until
knock on wood.
Because that's the thing. Like I keep telling people at the news press, they're like, "Oh, at least we made it." I was like, "No." Because here's the thing we got to keep in mind. While it looks like it's trending well for Oklahoma State, we don't know what's going on in Tulsa.
That's true.
Because we got to keep in mind that, as Tom said on Wednesday with me, things could change if Tulsa suddenly were to say, "Hey, actually, we've got a spike. We're shutting things down."
It's Friday, so I'm going to be an optimist. I refuse to be anything other than I'm
going to be a realist.
That's fine.
The reality
is
we don't have football until next Saturday.
I will toe the line and I will switch between time to time.
Okay. Yeah, you balance it out. That works.
Yes.
Speaking of, the Big Ten might actually end up having football. I think the developments over this past few days have been pretty crazy. Yesterday, when we had the announcement that the Big Ten director of athletic medicine or it was the Penn State athletic director of medicine came out and he's talking about, you know what? We looked through it and we had 30 to 35% of our COVID positive athletes that have come down with myocarditis. And when I saw that number, and my first thought was, oh, you know what? If that's real, well, then we can't play football at all. We got to test everybody, get an MRI, and make sure everyone's good to go. If that number, that high, didn't really. It was, and I think Jason and I briefly mentioned it, that report was out there. And when I saw a number that big, I really wanted to do some fact checking and make sure. I was like, wow, that's crazy. That's kind of groundbreaking if it's true. Well, then not too long after that, he comes out and says, I got to restate what I said there. None of the athletes have myocarditis. That was not what I meant by that. He just meant in general with COVID-19 positive tests, which I think a lot of people were like, okay, here we go. That's better. Well, as of, 20 minutes ago, the lawyer that's working on the behalf of the players, that the players ended up filing that lawsuit against the Big Ten, he said on a show earlier today that he's picked up some intelligence, that some indications that the presidents of the Big Ten simply failed to consult their boards before they voted, which may result in the cover-up behind everything here, that they're behind the scenes and all that, and said that things are kind of unraveling pretty fast, is how he put it, in the Big Ten. We may actually end up getting this done. I think your best case scenario, you're going to get 10 or 8 games starting around that October 10th date. You give a team like Ohio State a chance to win it all the way through, go 8-0, hop in the playoff, and could possibly win a championship before it's all said and done. But looks like we're trending possibly in getting this back right here.
I was going to say, just hear that there are those possible little twines of unraveling. We've been seeing this over the past couple weeks. It's just thread by thread by thread by thread. There's just little things that have been trickling down that there's been something wrong throughout this whole decision. And now to see that this is out there, I guess that is for a lot of us, that gives us the glimmer of hope that, hey, all of the Power 5 conferences are going to hopefully be able to play within the next couple months. But that also is a little weird to see that there's truly just, when it goes to the higher ups of some of these places, not being able to fully consult your board. That's really weird. In the whole structure of things.
I think Patrick and I have talked about it for many times now over the past several months. Communication right now during this pandemic at all levels, whether it's politics, sports, pros, college, conference within each university, communication has been just awful. And obviously that sounds like what the case is here.
Yeah.
And speaking of communication, I don't know if you also saw the Pac-12 commissioners now even reversing kind of their course, saying we think we'll have football by January or sooner. It's like, whoa, you guys voted on nothing until January 1. Now you're reversing course, probably because, as we've been saying, you follow the suit of Big Ten.
And let me make this clear. Communication's been bad. It was just exemplified by the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
It was put up in the spotlight of how bad it really is. You get Larry Scott saying, hey, we're going to have rapid tests available that we're going to end up testing daily, and it's going to take 15 minutes to get results back. Everyone's like, but we cancel football? Yeah, you're going to be able to test daily and get results in 15 minutes, and we can't have a season. And he comes out and says, in his mind, what he could see, he really wants the Pac-10 and the Big 12, or I missed them up there. I knew I was going to do that. The Big 10 and the Pac-12 to jump in together and say, you know what? We want to make sure we're on the board at the same time. That way we can get into the postseason, run that all in the same time and everything too. Bottom line, what Larry Scott is doing is realizing just what Kevin Warren's realizing. Wow, what if we had waited to this point? It looks like, what has happened with this coronavirus the whole time. We wait a little bit and new things come out every single time.
Because that's what happens, and we've seen a lot of places. Again, like you guys have been saying, communication has been the key thing for the majority of these situations. A lot of people, not only, of course, we've seen the higher-ups in several Power 5 conferences hopping the gun, but I mean, just even on local levels, there's been people jumping the gun and going to do certain things, and it's been hurting them, whether it is hurting people or hurting people financially. We've seen it on several levels of where the pandemic is still, you're still feeling the effect. We'll feel it for a long time, but we're just trying and we're hoping that we can get closer and closer to what will be just a little normalcy across the football landscape.
I think what we're seeing too is with the Big Ten right now getting so much backlash, how the way that it happened. Okay, I don't know if they necessarily expected it to this level, to where they get lawsuits from their own players. I think that was probably next level to them.
Yeah.
But when you look at the Big Ten or the Big Ten and what they ended up doing with this early decision, well, we've come back with all these new ideas of we can do this, we can test this. Then you got teams that are actually playing, doing so safely. Central Arkansas plays a game, they test 2 times, and nobody has COVID. They come back and play another game. Everyone's like, this is something that is doable. But when they come out, let's say this report goes further and they do confirm that presidents didn't go to their boards. So maybe then all of a sudden they really did have something to hide. That was the initial response, at least that I gave, was if they weren't willing to give the vote up as quickly as they did and that information, it told me they had something they weren't willing to let get out in the public unless they were forced to by law.
This could lead to a lot of different things, because if they're wanting to hide things when it came to the vote, what else could maybe some universities be hiding? There's extra layers to something like this. It's a multi-layered onion. There's so much at the core, but it's truly what could be hiding behind several doors.
In Michigan, we had reports that Jim Harbaugh has told his guys, be ready for mid-October, because we're going to end up playing by mid-October. Then you get the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, comes out. She was originally, when this back on the 26th of August, said she was glad that the Big Ten ended up canceling the football season. Well, they've been reversed in the state. They're going to end up having fall sports now, including high school football. That has changed. And you have to think that might mean something for Michigan and Michigan State down the road. I mean, all these, like you said, these little unraveling situations we got here, the best way to fix it, you reinstate the season, right? I think the best way to fix it, if you come out right now and you say, end of September or mid-October, whatever it is, let's get ready and go for it. And all of a sudden, you also have conveniently some players and maybe some parents that push that. Remember what the Big Ten did to us? It's kind of in the back of the mind a little bit, right?
It would cover up, say if you do it at the college level, it covers it up at almost every single level. Because then once you have the security of, okay, so these people that are going to be there for college education and are now allowed to go out there and they're able to play the sport that they love. Well, now here at the high school level, we will be more secure about everything. We have the confidence to do it if, say, Michigan State can do it, and that means Michigan high school sports can do it. And once you have one state that's really confident, you will see other states across the U.S. will do the exact same thing in other places where a little scared of what could potentially happen.
And I also wonder how much, there's been reports that the CDC is talking about a vaccine could be coming within a matter of 2 months. If that also it has these presidents and ADs rethinking their decision making as well, because maybe they're thinking, okay, even if we get into that peak season where we're interacting with cold and flu season as well, if we have a vaccine at that point, maybe that mitigates things as well.
I think the Big Ten ultimately, if the presidents and chancellors got the response that let's say lack of response, for instance, that the Pac-12 gave back to this, we might not see a budge, right? If there was like this little to no pushback, we're not going to have a season, or we're not really going to fight for it, we might be sitting here at this point where there's like, we got away with this, right? We talked about the whole bringing students on campus. cash in the check situation. Well, this might have been a little bit more of that. Let's, rubbing the hands in the dark. We got this done and didn't get as many questions about it as we thought.
Yeah, exactly. The little sinister, just like almost exaggerated tone that you get like something out of The Simpsons where everybody's just like, ooh. But hopefully with all this, we can get out of, like we were saying, the foggy, questionable times, and we get closer and closer to where everywhere we can get some football going around.
Yeah, that's going to be, I think, the ultimate healer. If we get a season, and think about it too, anything that's not a spring season, right?
Yep.
Anything that's not a spring season.
Yeah, spring season would just be, that'd be opening a whole new can of terrible.
Oh, that would make what the Big Ten did, and I think that's when you think about their initial decision, and they came out right when they said that and go, well, our plans are we're going to get it done in the spring. That just made people even more upset. It's one thing to get rid of the season. Some people be like, well, what are you talking about? They're talking about having a season. Like, no, those of us that can clearly read into what that would mean for college football as a whole, right? It's not going to help anybody, and that just made people more upset.
Yeah, it wouldn't work in a lot of different things, especially in some of those regions. You think about it, that's a lot of, once it hits January, February, that's terrible weather to be trying to play football. And, of course, you would have to try to do it indoors, and I assume that means trying to rent out NFL arenas. But that would be just a huge situation and a whole lot more money tied up into it, where I wouldn't want to touch that with a 6-foot pole.
Well, and I also wonder how much of the pushback from parents and players is also seeing the non-Power 5 conferences still going forward. American Athletic Conference, some FCS programs still playing. The fact that it's like, okay, we're a Power 5 program. If we're getting FCS and AAC are still playing, why can't we? Because we have more money, we have more resources to utilize. How are we unable to, but they can? I'm sure that probably also fed into those players and coach and parents pushing back as well.
Do you think that seeing the FCS and then seeing the first FBS game being played, like physically played, was kind of like what you just said? It was like, look, right? That's basically what it was. Like, it is happening. We can do it.
I mean, the players and parents were already pushing back because we heard that they were going to try to play, but once we had the first FCS game, I think that's when the pressure got on the Big Ten, not from the parents and whatnot. It's it happened. Oh, right? Crap! Yeah. Here's the reality that we were afraid of when we first made our announcement. We are some people are able to play right now.
Yeah, that throws all the awareness. If everybody goes, hey, they get to play. They may not be in the position that we are, but they get to play. Why can't we get on the field and go play some football? I mean, really.
A world where Central Arkansas can play twice before Ohio State can get a game in. Ooh,
exactly.
Yikes.
That's a world.
Technically, they're getting 2 in before everyone is.
Well, yeah, you're right. You're right.
Technically,
yeah, but just from a Big Ten standpoint. So, do you guys is the biggest say the Big Ten comes back with what we talked about, 8 games starting mid-October? Is Ohio State and Justin Fields the biggest winner here, if that's the case?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, the only thing that Justin Fields truly has to gain is potentially maybe boosting his stock and trying to get past Trevor Lawrence and deal with the Clemson dynasty and trying to get that one step forward. But I mean, overall, it's a win for everybody. But I mean, Ohio State and their continued success, I think they'd probably have to be the biggest winner.
I wonder how much also the push from the Big Ten is coming from that NCAA announcement that whether you play or not this year, you're not going to lose a year of eligibility.
No.
Because now you're looking at it from a competitive disadvantage. Not only was it, well, recruiting, you can make the argument, they got to play, we didn't, that's going to benefit them. But like I've been putting in my stories, Spencer Sanders can play 10 games this year, and then next year, with 2 years of experience, still have 3 years of eligibility.
Right.
That is a huge advantage for anybody who plays this fall, because you get that extra year of experience, but not risking eligibility. If you're in the Big Ten, whether you're a coach, player, anything, you're looking and saying, that is a huge disadvantage for us if we're not playing.
Yeah. If the pressure is as on as it seems to be from this lawsuit, if I'm the Big Ten president's attorney, okay, I'm representing all of them, whatever, I'm going up to that guy. If there truly was some dirt back there that we didn't need with our boards or whatever, I'm going up to him right now and I'm saying, look, you and I, we're going to make this deal right now. We don't reveal anything that ever happened behind the scenes, whether that means we met with our boards or not. In exchange, we reinstate the season in a month. that right there, deal done, shake the hand.
But then the problem is you get back right to the situation you find yourself in now that you're arguing of some shady things happening behind the scenes.
How much would you take of shadiness if it meant getting the season back, though? If it meant
It's shady's still shady.
okay,
Whether it's shady good, shady bad, it's still shady.
still shady.
But I think we'd still take all the shade in the world to get a season back.
I honestly would probably be in that boat.
I mean, some people would, but again, when job security is involved as well,
That is
when
true.
you're a person of power and it's leaked that that you were doing some back alley deals, then you're not worried. Most are worried about whether sports were played. It was whether or not you're going to have a job once that's found out.
So,
That's very true.
the leak of them doing that, you think means more to the presidents than the leak of them not meeting with their boards, for instance, and everything.
Well, again, I think it depends on how many
Yeah.
presidents, quote unquote, didn't meet with their boards.
Right,
I mean,
right.
if it's one or two, and it's Minnesota, it's like nobody cares anyway.
Yeah, that's
they
a good
don't have,
point.
yeah.
If it's Rutgers in Minnesota,
Yeah,
this is
because
not a big deal.
because we've heard from the Minnesota, is it the president or the AD who made the comment that
President, I believe,
don't know
yeah.
if there was a vote. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Minnesota has no idea what happened because clearly the president, who according to the Big Ten now voted in it and voted to cancel it, is now saying, oh, I don't know, maybe she was ultimately covering her butt with the board members of I didn't know there was a vote. That's why we didn't talk about it.
As you've seen, teams like Minnesota, Maryland, Rutgers, why they even get a vote is questionable to some people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we come back, Jason and I have already talked a little bit about this Thunder game, but the biggest Thunder fan in the room hasn't got a chance to express his woes. We'll talk about that. Also coming up, it's a Fantasy Friday. We're going to break down our top tight ends and wide receivers who would pick. We are less than a week away from the first NFL game of the season. Man, that feels good
We'll
to
also
say.
have to talk about the whole why you don't draft early because
we've-
yet another running back.
Yeah, we've got plenty of running back talk. That's been the thing. It's been running backs.
All week long.
All week long. It's been running backs, and we're going to talk about that too. Still, much more to come here on the Afternoon Sports Drive.
I'm gonna puke, cause my taxes are due. Do my password begin with a 1 or a 2? Been a hell of a ride, but I'm thinking it's time to grow.
Metronome.
Man, I'm up to something. Ooh-dee-la-dee-do, thank you all for coming. I hope you like the show, cause it's on a budget. So ooh-dee-la-dee-do, yeah. Come on, here we go, yeah. Come on.
Here we go.
So put your best face on, everybody pretend.
Welcome back, Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network on a Friday. It's a Fantasy Friday. We'll get to that. Football. We're going to just call it a Football Friday, basically, but a lot of stuff to get to here. As I said, it's like, I think technically, right, like week 1 for pretty much everybody else that didn't play last week with high school football, but it feels like week 2 already for me, which really it is when we got Perry coming up, cashing tonight. We'll be on the air here at 6:30, so get you ready for that. They have we won't even mention what happened last game. It's just we'll just leave it at that for what happened with Perry. Sorry out there, Maroons fans, but so you have that to look forward to. Let's look at this. I know it's been a few days, but getting Levi on now, we'll spend a little bit of time on it. Not long, just a little bit here, and get to this Thunder stuff because. Yeah, they ended up leaving. They're done with the bubble, but as I said, I mean they went farther than I ever, and that looked farther than I ever would have thought. Game 7 with the Houston Rockets. Now, granted, had Russell Westbrook been healthy, we might have seen a difference. I don't know. I wish I want to say that just being a Russell Westbrook fan, but we all know what happened. Start with what you thought overall. The fact that they were in that Game 7 all the way down to the wire, and then we'll get to what transpired on the last play there.
Not going to lie, overall for the season, some people are going to hate this. I take this season as a W. This whole season has been, honestly, one of the more enjoyable seasons I've had over the past couple of years. And I think it's because, and it's weird that it's because we don't have that added pressure of you're expected to be in the NBA playoff hunt, you're expected to win the NBA title, you're expected to be trampling your people in your division. It's like our expectations were you might have a couple good games. Chris Paul might be okay. You guys may not be the worst team in the NBA. And then what ended up happening was, Chris Paul plays some of his most efficient basketball of his career. You have several guys break out, whether it was Darius Bazley, whether it was Lou Dort with his career-high 30 points, and most by an undrafted rookie in the playoffs. You had several other guys step up and have really great moments throughout the season, and you end up on the other side as the 5th seed, and yes, you get knocked out in the first round of the playoffs, but overall, there were too many great moments to outweigh the bad. And of course, you went out on what I would say is a sour ending to the NBA playoffs for the Oklahoma City Thunder. But overall, this season's a W.
I think that's fair, right? I mean, they blew expectations out of the water.
Exactly, and that's what I, because you had brought up, you've seen a lot of people calling for Donovan's job and whatnot. And the reality is, if it weren't for what he and these players did this year, there would have been real reason for him to lose his job, because they weren't again. There's that image floating around social media how ESPN claimed that they had a less than 1% chance of making the playoffs, and they went to a Game 7 against the Rockets with 2 former MVPs, not like MVPs from like 10 years ago, within the past 3 years. And two future guaranteed locked in Hall of Famers who are at the peak, where your best player is at the end of his career, of a Hall of Fame career, in Chris Paul. I don't look at that and say, man, that guy deserves to be fired. I look at that and say, man, imagine what he could do if he had better talent around him, if he didn't have egos like he had with Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant previously, what he could do if he has the right guys and better talent and younger talent around some of those key pieces like SGA and Gallinari.
Yeah, we got to see a coach who finally got a system around him and got players around him that actually fit what he was trying to do. You got Chris Paul, who was more of your traditional point guard. Of course, Chris Paul, he's going to do Chris Paul things, argue with the refs, do a lot of flopping. I mean, there was a good 40-second sequence right at the end of the game that for anybody who hates flopping, your eyes cried for a good chunk of it. But Chris Paul overall, one of the best point guards of all time, because he's just such a general out on the court. And he was perfect. He was a perfect fit for Billy Donovan's system. And then you got all the key pieces to fill in, whether it was your extremely young athletic players who still had a lot of growth. You saw a lot of those guys out there trying to fit the pieces together, and they became better players, and they still have a ways to go. With Billy Donovan, I think they'll be able to grow. Lou Dort, I will go back to this guy so much because he's an undrafted rookie out of Arizona State that just blew up on the scene. And I mean, earlier, I believe when he was supposed to be drafted, he was supposed to be drafted in the first round, dropped all the way, and now has earned himself a starting spot on OKC's squad, went out there and had a great game, balled out. He is one of those key people that you circle, like that's what happens when you're with a guy like Billy Donovan. Billy Donovan, he hasn't lost his job at all. Actually, with the job that he's done this season, going from supposed to be at the bottom of the barrel of the NBA to making your way into the playoffs and showing that all these young guys are going to have a bright future in the NBA, I think you've earned an extension and then some.
Well, since we're focusing on kind of the offseason with the talk of, what do you do with the coach, what do you do with the players? In your mind, who do you consider cutting? Who do you consider trying to trade? Who do you say, this is the future of our franchise, so this is what we want to build around now? The
only guy that I know that I would be trading is Steven Adams. I think as a Thunder fan, I think everybody loves Steven Adams to death. He's a good personality. He's a good player, but he also has a lot of moments where you sit there and you sit and say, we expect a little bit more out of you, because with how the way you've progressed over these past couple of years, it feels like he's almost plateaued a little bit here in OKC.
When you saw him, what was your thought? Because, again, I very sparingly watch NBA, but late in the game where it's a tight ball game and at least 2 instances where he got out-rebounded by James Harden, what was going through your mind at that point?
I always do the constant of, is he injured? Because sometimes Steven Adams' injuries continuously goes through my mind. But if he's not injured, where's the effort, man? Just because, I mean, all you have to do is legit just little hop, and you're already taller than James Harden. You can go get that ball easily. And whether it's he's hurt or just that extra effort, I feel like you could get a decent trade value out of him. And like we were talking, it's depending on what team you land on, because some teams don't run with a traditional center. But I think there's a lot of teams that would see the value in a guy like Steven Adams.
I think Patrick and I agree on this one, where we're actually going to disagree with you, where I don't think his trade value is as high as you think, because the NBA is shifting away from your traditional center. If he had a 3-point capabilities added to it, then yes, I could see some trade value. But you're not going to get what you would probably want from him in a trade. So I mean, it's going to have to be get an average second round draft pick player, or a second round pick period. I don't think you're getting a first round pick or a first round talent in trading away Steven Adams. What about you, Patrick?
If the Thunder aren't careful with this, he's going to turn into the next Nick Collison for the Thunder.
Yeah.
Because what happened with Nick Collison turned into stone, and that was it, right? Everyone loved him. Great for the fans and all this. That's Steven Adams' future, I think, if he sticks around too late with OKC.
The problem is at least Nick Collison didn't take up $100 million for 5 years.
He hasn't screwed him out of that yet. So
there's one more year for, and just shifting away from Adams real quick. There's one more year for Chris Paul guaranteed, and then a player option. With what he did in this postseason, again, age I'm sure will be a factor in the money still left on that contract. But do you try to shop him? Because I think this is going to be the best value you're going to get from him coming off of what he just did this postseason.
Oh, it will most likely be his best trade value probably for the rest of his career. This will probably be his highest you'll ever get out of him. But I think you get more out of him being there for your squad, and SGA has gotten a lot out of him. Baisley, like I was saying, Terrence Ferguson, all these young guys get to soak up so much information from a guard that's seen it all throughout the league and has done so much and has been to so many places. He's got so much knowledge that I don't know with whatever you'll be able to get out of it. Of course, you'll probably now be able to con somebody out of like 3 more first-round picks. But with how much knowledge that he has and how much experience that a lot of these people can get from just being able to sit there and talk with Chris Paul and just get to pick his brain just a little bit more, I would rather have a guy like that that can basically almost transfer his talent to the next generation than maybe already scout for the future some more.
But in that same breath, is there not a worry of stunting the growth of those young guys because he's essentially taking minutes and ball and shots and looks away from those guys because he's still there, he's the point guy, and the fact that again he's almost at the end of his career, and you've got some guys right around that position that are just starting out.
Well, that was kind of the thought going into the season, that he was going to stunt them already, that SGA wasn't going to get as much time. Lou Dort probably wasn't going to be a name. That's what people were thinking, that you were still going to have to deal with some difficulties with Terrence Ferguson. Andre Robertson, we didn't even know if he was coming back. That was the idea coming into the season. And like how everything's been, Chris Paul proved everybody wrong. And it might be just for one season. Heck, it might be for 2. But I think with what I've seen from him and how he's been able to just prop up these players and help get them to that next step a lot faster than you usually would, I would keep Chris Paul, because I think with him, you have a brighter future for your young core.
Are you going to get that picture of him staring down James Harden and frame it and keep it forever?
Potentially.
That's a classic.
Oh, yeah,
I like that one.
That one's great. That's going to be one where if I ever can get him to sign, need you to sign this. Please.
Yeah, that was an instant classic. Let's break down that last play really quickly here, and get what you thought on it. As I initially said, I just put plain and simple. To me, that can't happen. You got to give yourself some sort of a shot, some sort of a chance to even get to that point. I know the time was low and it had to be real quick, but if ever there was a time to execute, and I got to say this too, with the way the Rockets played, I think the Rockets were lucky that the supporting cast showed up behind Westbrook and James Harden. When James Harden shoots the way that he did, and Westbrook honestly too wasn't great, they're lucky they had 3 or 4 other guys that were putting up some numbers. That would have been it, the way the Thunder were playing.
Oh, yeah, the way the Rockets honestly were playing, or at least the main stars of Harden and Westbrook, it was one of those off nights. And that's how the Rockets work.
In the Game 7.
Yeah, in Game 7, it's either half the time they're on fire and good luck to anybody, or no, they're going to need some help. And thank goodness they have a core of a lot of really good players. Robert Covington, man. a guy that I needed covered 24/7, 365. I needed daily coverage on Robert Covington for what he did. I mean, he was, to me, that big plug-in, and then, of course, Eric Gordon. Both of those guys played phenomenal. And on that final play, I'm still frustrated. Why is that play drawn up for Danilo Gallinari? I love Gallo to death, but he played terrible.
Yeah.
He only had 4 points on the night, 4 turnovers. The same amount of points as turnovers. That's kind of crazy.
And we're going to give him the ball.
Yeah, we're going to give him the ball over Lou Dort, who is having the career-high 30 points. Chris Paul, triple-double, just was playing like a man possessed. And you have SGA, a big core of guys who don't mind taking big shots. I would be trying to get that ball into Chris Paul as much as possible. But then again, when everybody looks at the basket, covering Steven Adams, you had PJ Tucker. I almost want to say Patrick Patterson, but
not anymore.
No, he's sitting on the bench in the Clippers collecting a check. But with all that, PJ Tucker was covering Steven Adams, a 7-foot dude being covered by a guy who's 6'5", and you'd feel like with that height, you should be able to get him in the ball. And of course, this is us playing coach while we're watching the television, and we're wishing that was what Billy Donovan was seeing, because whenever you got a guy like your SGA trying to figure out where to go to, he's going to go where coach is going to say. He's only a second-year guy. He probably doesn't have the confidence to step out of what coach is saying. But you should at least be able to survey the court, and if option 1's not there, option 2 is a 7-foot dude being covered by some guy who's 6'5", who can easily just dunk it down. You go into overtime.
Is it fair to say that that's where the Thunder may have missed Russell Westbrook or Kevin Durant in that situation, where you have the luxury of knowing where you're going to go with the ball 100%? They go down, they look at that last play, right? Billy Donovan's getting it all set up, and they thinks, let's get it to Gallo. Okay. Everyone's like, okay, whatever. Well, it took no brains if you have Westbrook or KD there. We know who it's going to go to. Whether the shot is even good or they get it off, you can never always look back and go, look who got the last touch on the ball, right? I think that's where they have that really big luxury of having a star player they used to have. This time they just, CP3 was maybe your best option. Or, heck, SGA's throwing it in. He might be your best option.
Yeah, as I say, one of those guys are your best option, not Gallo, who for the night was cold as ice. I'd be going to somebody else, and you could even look down the bench, and if you wanted Dennis Schroeder in, he had 12 points on the night. Gallo was not the guy to go to, and that's one of those lapse in judgment type of calls. And I think every coach has that. Every person has a lapse in judgment every once in a while, and you just hoped that it wasn't with a couple seconds left on the clock and you need to throw up a shot.
That's where the hate, I think, is coming to Billy Donovan, is his clutch coaching here.
Well, and I think we need to look more into it and beyond just the Thunder. Maybe he was looking at the fact that he knew Gallinari was going to be paired up against the worst defender for the Rockets.
He probably looked matchup and thought that was it.
Right. So maybe that's what he was thinking. Because again, like I've been saying, the last minute and a half, if I were coaching, I wouldn't have given the ball to CP3 because he had been shut down by Eric Gordon, and you knew Eric Gordon was going to be on CP3. So even if there was like 3 or 4 screens, which you wouldn't have time for, it still would have been tough for that. So that's why I understand not going to CP3 because he had a chance in the last minute and a half and showed that he couldn't do it against that defender. So maybe that's what we need to look at, is why Donovan thought, let's go with Gallinari, because he thought maybe that's the worst defender and our best chance of scoring, because right now, you look at it, the last minute and a half, the offense for the Thunder was pretty abysmal. And honestly, so was the Rockets' offense. But maybe that's what he was looking at, the best matchup, and not necessarily who's our hottest shooter and stuff like that.
And see, I think that's where you and I would differ coaching-wise, is because if I'm sitting there and what that does to me, looking for matchups, it causes overthink in the time where you don't need to overthink something.
But I think it goes back also to the fact that you don't have that superstar.
No, it does. It does. That's why I'm saying.
But we also have to keep in mind, even with Phil Jackson, when you had Michael Jordan, it wasn't always Michael taking the last shot.
Right. That's where you always hear, no matter what sport it is, you get the ball in the hands of your best player. You get the ball in the hands of your playmaker. And a lot of coaches live and die by that, right?
And I think also a good question is, well, then, if that is your philosophy, then why is SGA the one guy handing the ball in? That's been my whole question the whole time, because you could tell before that last timeout to toss it in when Billy Donovan took it, SGA did not know where to go before then, and they had the full 4 seconds of what they were going to do, redrop another play. SGA still looked confused. He did not need to be the guy handing in the ball. That's where I have Chris Paul over there. I have the veteran over there handing in the ball, has the knowledge to, because he has the confidence where if something for Billy Donovan doesn't work, well, I got Steven Adams down there, and he can make a move.
Or I even consider putting Steven Adams as the guy throwing it in, because obviously that puts your tallest guy out there. And here's the thing, as much as we disrespect him for because he doesn't have a three-point shot, he has some of the best court vision of anyone on that team. So he's going to be able to see everything, how it's breaking down, and be able to process it maybe faster than an SGA did.
Or to get rid of the cold hand situation with Gallo out there, just have Gallo toss it in, because Gallo's 6'8". He's pretty tall himself. He can survey the court and he can dish it off.
I saw people respond to what you just said with SGA on Twitter, social media, whatever. They were all like, well, the pressure would have been too much on that dude taking the last shot at his age. I'm like, the pressure was on him throwing the ball in. Like, we could all see that.
That's more pressure, because that means you have to have perfect accuracy to get it in, and if you slip up, it's on the second-year guy.
Yeah, you let your guy shoot.
Yeah, there's a reason, and that's a great point, because there's a reason. If you go back, if there's enough time, if you look at some of the plays back in the 90s with Michael Jordan, he was the one throwing the ball in and then shooting.
Right, exactly.
Because you took the pressure off of anyone botching the flow of the play.
Yeah. As obviously anyone can tell, there was a lot of thought that had to go into a really short amount of time there, and we can understand why you might see some things that happened with the Thunder that did transpire.
But overall, even though we could break down that little last couple of seconds, those couple of seconds don't define what this OKC season was. The OKC season was succeeding when everybody thought you were going to fail.
Yeah, and that's what CP3 said after the game. Look, that was our chip on our shoulder. We didn't care about projections, care about people talking. We went in and got it done. When we come back, we're going to get into some NFL. And then second hour, we'll get into Fantasy Friday. Running back drama continues to take over the league. That's next.
It's been a too long time with no peace of mind. I'm ready for the times to get better. I've got to tell you, I've been racking my brain, hoping to find a way out. I've had enough of this continual rain. Changes are coming, no doubt. It's been a too long time with no peace of mind, and I'm ready for the times to get better. You seem to want from me what I cannot give. I feel so lonesome at times.
Welcome back, Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Let's go straight to the phone lines to start off the end of hour number one here. And go ahead, caller, you're on the Afternoon Sports Drive.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Afternoon.
So I got to jump in on the Thunder conversation before you move on to the NFL. But man, I agree with you that I think they way overachieved, but they definitely overachieved this year. Steven Adams, I don't think he's made any progress really in the last 2 to 3 years. I think they expected more from him. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. And then I think, from what I can see, that his contract was a 4-year contract for, $100 million starting in 17. Wouldn't that be up by that, or isn't that up this year? And would we re-sign and re-trade him, you think?
I'm going to search it real quick.
Okay, good that you're searching.
Yeah, but what's your opinion? Has he shown development that you would have anticipated?
No, I'm kind of with the caller. I think that over the past couple of years, and starting back whenever Russell Westbrook and Carmelo and Paul George were the main three, I think everybody was expecting Steven Adams to truly step up. But I think at some level he's just kind of plateaued and has just kind of stayed at a constant rate of, he's going to be good. He'll probably get you about 10 and 8 a game, but there should be that certain extra level that I think everybody's seen in where he might be able to take that step up. He might be able to be that actual third guy that you were wanting Carmelo to be. But at every opportunity where the mics kicked in, it felt like Steven Adams didn't take that next step.
He has 1 year left on his contract, which sometimes is a positive thing because that draws a lot of attention when it comes to trade value, because if people are looking to dump salaries and stuff like that, they want someone that only has 1 year left on their contract.
Yes, sir. That's
right.
That's easy trade bait. You find a team that's looking to tank for the number 1 overall pick, you can trade that salary off, get maybe a draft pick, maybe a decent player, a decent young player. That'd be really, really good.
Well, as far as him underachieving too, I mean, we've seen you used to go down the list right back when it was Westbrook and KD, and you go, oh yeah, Steven Adams too is a big part of that offense. Well, then we moved down the row a little bit here. A few years later, oh yeah, Steven Adams, yeah, he is there still, isn't he?
The tone changes a little bit.
It's like, oh yeah, well, what does he do? Really decides to take up space at this point.
I think I would package him with a T. Berg or a Roberson and send him off. And if I couldn't package him, I'd probably I don't know, my target in my head, I would look at him as a $15 million, maybe a $12 to $15 million player, or even maybe a little lower than that. And he's probably a second center. I don't know that I would make him my primary going into the next contract.
And that's where you have what we've talked about. I think his ideal position and what he does as more of your true center type, a little bit of athleticism here and there, it just isn't a part of the NBA as much anymore, and it's fading away. There's just not room for that type of guy anymore.
Yeah, with that type of guy, you only see a couple teams truly rock out with a center like that. The only teams I can ever truly think of is with a traditional center like that. Half of those traditional centers are coming off the bench. I think of like a Hassan Whiteside for Portland.
Yeah.
And the weirdest scenario is JaVale McGee sitting there in Los Angeles. He's somehow able to do it. But when you have talent like Anthony Davis and LeBron James, I guess you're okay to have JaVale McGee at center.
Do either of you, real quick, looking at the contracts, there's one definitively that is his contract's up this year, either Collar or Levi, Gallinari. Do you think he returns?
Ooh,
does he re-sign?
Gallo is an interesting player. You go ahead, Collar.
I don't bring him back. I mean, he's got some decent. He's just not athletic enough to blend with that team where they are with Dort and Shai Gilgeous, and even if you keep Chris Paul, I just don't think Gallinari's athletic enough to really fit into this team.
And his disappearance in Game 7 might have sealed it, right?
Yeah, the disappearance might have. I mean, especially
and especially at $22.6 million, and he'd be 33 next year.
Yes, he took up a big chunk of cap when he got his contract from LA, and especially when you had a guy like Darius Bazley who was really coming into his own during the bubble games. He was really looking solid. So maybe you do want to get Gallo out of here because he will most likely be a pretty penny. But if you can get it for a cheap contract, I wouldn't mind it. But getting him out of here would make a lot of open room for guys like Dort to maybe get some more time and Bazley to get some more time.
Yeah. And one more thing about Adams, I think where I see his biggest flaw or his hole in his game is he doesn't have a 10 to 12-foot jumper, and that it just doesn't work in today's game anymore. Yep. You've got to have, as a big man, you've got to be able to pull that guy away from the basket with a jumper a little bit and then be able to drive around it.
Yeah, there's
I'll
no
leave
more.
You guys do it.
Appreciate it. Yeah, there's no more playing off the blocks. You know.
If you want a guy like that, you already have a guy who I feel like is more athletic in Nerlens Noel sitting on your bench.
That's what I said yesterday. That
except his contract's up.
Yeah, and I feel like he's been one of the bigger busts.
But Nerlens Noel will be a cheaper contract than anything Steven Adams.
Certainly. And that's looking at guys that are at the end of their contracts for the Thunder. Real quick, Gallinari. Roberson, which again, that's $10.7 million that you're not going to re-sign, and Nerlens Noel. So between those three, that's about $35 million of cap space that you're going to get from those guys not re-signing. Obviously, you factor in that some of your guys like Chris Paul and Steven Adams are going to be making more than they did this year. But I think if you consider that package up Steven Adams, maybe you can try to make a trade for a big all-star type of talent when you can say, hey, we have this much money that we can utilize and that won't hurt the luxury tax.
Levi, that's what I want to ask you to put a bow on it here real quick, is for the Thunder to take that next step, which is getting back to a Western Conference Finals at the least, right? Do they have to go out and get the big-time superstar back in OKC?
I don't know if you have to get a big-time superstar like, oh, I have to go get a Paul George, or I have to go get someone with a caliber of Russell Westbrook or Kevin Durant. I think you need a budding all-star or someone who is on the cusp, because I think that, like I was saying with Bazley, they have improved, but I think they still have a long ways to go. I need somebody who's going to be a nice 1A to 1B to SGA, so that way Chris Paul will be able to groom both of them, and whenever he's gone at the end of his contract, those two will be the A and B to take over OKC.
So you're saying kind of another SGA type of talent?
Yes.
All right.
Fair.
Let's also not forget that, as I was looking down, Thunder are still paying Kyle Singler and Patrick Peterson. Just going to throw that out there.
That's unbelievable. That's a crime.
Singler gets paid every year until the end of the 2022-2023 season.
How dare he?
Kyle Singler, can I borrow $5, please?
For nothing. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, like,
Yes.
that was not earned money, by the way.
No.
Yeah. All right. This is the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. When we come back in hour number 2, we're going to dive into the NFL, latest news, a bunch of running back talk to get to, as well as it's Fantasy Friday. We'll dive into that coming up.
I don't wanna wait for our lives to be over. You haven't, but you take it how you left it. This is give and take. Take your time, take me under. I wanna know, but you show me what I'm missing. In the plane down in Southern California, running in the streets all day. I guess some of us just gotta learn the hard way. Don't give a damn, nobody gotta say we selling now. I don't wanna wait.
Welcome back into hour number 2 of the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
Would you take
Patrick Wheeler, Jason Elmquist, Levi Peckinpah hanging out on a Friday. So we get you rolling into your weekend. Hope everybody's going to have a fantastic Labor Day weekend. I know we will. And enjoy it with some football. And get ready for, well, the football that's coming, which is a lot. It's going to be coming down the pipe here. College, NFL, high school, all on its way in. As we dive into some NFL talk here, we've been talking like crazy about running backs over the last few days because it's been all the NFL news. And you got to say, it's given us plenty to talk about with no preseason games, right? We've been able to discuss the good or bad moves that have come on with these running backs. We'll start with, we already talked about it a little bit, but we'll start with talking to Levi about Leonard Fournette finding himself a brand new home with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And everything seemed all good and dandy to me until Bruce Arians said what he said, and he's like, hey, Rojo's still our guy. I'm like, come on now. Let's go ahead and get ready to hand the keys over. But I don't think it'll take long for Tommy Brady to go to Bruce Arians and say, look, that's my guy. You know, just like he did in New England. So that's who I prefer playing with. Let's have him get more snaps, right? It's kind of the same thing here, I think.
Right, and I think this also has to be based around who's compromised for the playbook. Has Bruce Arians compromised and given Tom Brady more of a New England playbook, or has Tom Brady compromised to what Bruce Arians has in that system? Because if it's Tom Brady's compromise, it doesn't matter who's back there at running back, because the Bruce Arians system is we don't like to use our running backs that often, and we truly don't like to use our tight ends that often. Ask O.J. Howard, ask Cameron Brate, ask Gronk in a couple weeks when he doesn't see many touches. So if it's Tom Brady's got a little bit more control in that playbook, then yeah, this is a good move, because in New England, running backs, they were a carousel. You had so many good running backs in that line. We could pull out a giant scroll and go through the years of running backs and how half of them are most likely James White. But with this move, this is really good, because Leonard Fournette last year probably had his best year of his career. And as soon as the best year happens, Jacksonville squanders everything. Now, players have been traded everywhere or released, whether it was the release of Leonard Fournette, the trading of Yannick Ngakoue, the trading of Ronnie Harrison, and now Leonard Fournette ends up as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. I think this will be a good fit as long as the playbook is more styled towards Tom Brady.
I think it's going to be a lot of look, I got to say this too first. There's been a lot of people I've seen that are, I'm not thrilled about this move. Leonard Fournette's not that great. Look, last year, his best year, yards per carry sucked. Touchdowns weren't good. But look at the offense he was on. That team was brutal. And he accounted for over 30% of their yards, man.
It was Gardner Minshew, an occasional DJ Chark, and a dream. That's what their offense was. And Leonard Fournette was able to have his best year in a terrible situation. Now you get out of that terrible situation and you go to one of these Super Bowl favorites. And I said one of, so that way y'all Chiefs fans can realize that you guys are still my top. But when you go to a system like that, you play with some of the greatest players of all time. You'll be playing next to Tom Brady. You'll be playing next to Rob Gronkowski. You could be playing for I mean, literally almost anything, and you'd be wanting on that field.
So our bottom line, where I know how Jason feels on it too. Are you good with this move? Does this move sit with you guys? Is like you could find some success there, right?
Oh yeah, you're going to find a lot of success, and I assume he's not going to be that pounded down your throat type of guy because you've got a carousel of running backs, whether it's Peyton, Barber, whether it is Rojo, or now whether it's Leonard Fournette. There's going to be a lot of people getting touches.
Yeah. Oh, that's the problem though is. There's only one ball to give those touches to, though, and we already knew with Leonard Fournette that he can get easily disgruntled. So that'd be the one worry. If I'm a Bucs fan, is the off the field issues with him. If he's not getting the touches that he wants. Does he, go revert to the Leonard Fournette of 2 years ago, 3 years ago, where he was considered locker room cancer in Jacksonville? And the other thing is. Everyone just instantly thinks, oh, this is going to be a great marriage with Tom Brady, Bruce Arians, all this other stuff. But we got to keep in mind, Tom Brady's not a spring chicken. And Bruce Arians wants to, spread the field. He wants to go long on every single pass. That's why Jameis Winston worked so well in that system. He also was bad in the system because he sometimes would try to force things in. Tom Brady won't do that. But at the same time, do I think Tom Brady can throw for 5,000 yards in this system? No, because that's not how he's built anymore.
That's why I think they're ultimately going to do a disservice, like I said yesterday, to not giving more snaps to Leonard Fournette if they don't. That's what I'm saying, because we know what Tom Brady likes to do with dumping the ball off,
Yep.
and then Leonard Fournette would be easier, ideal. That's why I think this is such a good move, because Tom Brady's still going to pull Tom Brady. He's going to get it off to his running back.
And that's why I'm worried about, and again, they're coming off great years, the stud wide receivers, because we don't know what they can do when they're having to deal with a quarterback who doesn't want to throw more than 15 yards. I mean, I think you're still going to see them get some yardage, and because obviously you go back to San Diego last year, so their stud wide receivers still put up yards, even though you had a very diminished skill set from Phillip Rivers, but. They shouldn't be expecting, each of those guys getting 1,500 yards receiving, because they don't have a guy like Jameis Winston who's wanting to throw the ball more than 15 yards downfield. So I still have them up there as talented wide receivers, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is a slight downturn in their production because the quarterback just isn't that gunslinger that they had a year ago.
Oh yeah, Tom Brady's not going to be. Of course, he's not a spring chicken, but you also got to think about that Patriots offensive line was not in a good way last year. They were having difficulties.
And there was no talent at wide receiver, so obviously he had to check down a lot. Yeah.
Don't do my boy Julian Edelman like that now.
Julian Edelman's really good, but this is for a different time. But with Tom Brady, to me, like I was saying, it's going to be a compromise. If Bruce Arians' Cheesecake Factory menu of playbooks has been condensed a little bit to more of Tom Brady's liking, I think we're going to have a good Tampa Bay team. But if things are leaning more towards Bruce Arians, where you're going to see if 40-plus-year-old Tom Brady can still sling it down 50 yards, then, oh boy, then we got something for you.
Really do think Chris Godwin is going to have a fantastic season. If you had to choose out of him and Mike Evans, then Chris Godwin is going to be your guy, because he's going to fill, if they run him in the slot enough, they run him those mid routes, Tom Brady can still hit that the best of anybody. It's going to be something that Chris Godwin's going to feast on.
Oh yeah, Chris Edelman. I mean, I said
might
Chris
as well
Edelman.
be Chris Edelman.
That's
now,
what I was about to say. Chris Godwin will be your Julian Edelman 2.0.
Yeah.
Just better.
Yeah.
Because Chris Godwin is so talented. And, of course, breakout year last season, him and Mike Evans went insane. But I think for what Tom Brady's skill set is, Chris Godwin and Tom Brady, it's like a match made in heaven.
Yeah, no, I think that's going to be the case this year as well. Let's look at the latest running back news, and that is, well, one of the best to ever do it is still in the league, and that's Adrian Peterson, but he just lost his team, and it was a surprise according to him. And I think a lot of people, too, based off of which we say that, and I talked to, when Levi and I were talking earlier today, we're like, shouldn't really be probably that surprised, but it does kind of come as that way. Based off, too, one of the worst things I saw today, the Washington football team now, their Instagram post they had earlier this year, well, there's Adrian Peterson in his jersey. He's ready to go. He's all pumped up. That was yikes.
Wasn't that like a day's difference?
Yeah. It was like really. It was like a couple days ago. Yeah, it was one of the freezing cold takes ones I saw. So that was bad.
Does this bode well or negatively for Alex Smith though, in your mind? If they're wanting to chop some old dead weight,
is Alex Smith dead weight? That's the thing. Is I think if Dwayne Haskins isn't as not so wishy-washy. I mean, if he had shown them anything last year, and he didn't show them anything. If he had shown them anything.
But did Bryce Love show them anything last year?
Well, no, obviously not. That's why we have a four-man backfield getting ready to happen.
It's basically, are you trying to take for Trevor Lawrence, or are you trying to tank for someone else who isn't Trevor Lawrence, but will be a really good player?
You're in a bad spot because you're like, we want to give Dwayne Haskins one more shot. But how much longer can that possibly go? Especially think about it this way. I know the Redskins are bad. Well, I keep calling them the football team is bad. But let's say the Cowboys and Eagles find a way, the Giants find a way to not be great, and all of a sudden I know it's a long shot, but you're somewhat in the mix here. It's one of the signs where like we need to hit, right?
I mean, at this point, Haskins is looking like the next Rosen. Because have you heard he's already on the trade block again as well? Like that's what Haskins is on pace for in my mind.
Well, the main thing is both Rosen and now Haskins have landed in franchises in the worst possible timing. Half the time for these guys, it's just bad timing. Some people's career just gets destroyed because of bad timing.
Glad you said that because I really think this is a blessing in disguise for AP. Why? Because if he's already said he wants to continue his career, another team will scoop him up.
Yeah, the Jets.
yeah, right. Say, hey,
they sign all the
you remember
old
Frank
guys,
Gore, right?
Yeah,
you guys came up together.
That's why they didn't sign Leonard Fournette because he wasn't old enough.
Right. You got to be at least 35.
No, wait, I thought he was going to get signed by the Bills, so that way you can get more people to take some more balls from Devin Singletary.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I really want to happen. Now, I'm actually thinking this for AP because that whole organization is a cesspool. And we know that now with the ownership.
Top down, yep.
Dan Snyder, I mean, come on. Mm-hmm. Really? With everything that keeps coming out. I think if I'm AP, I'm like, okay. Look at the running backs that were back there, too. It's going to be an absolute mess back there. The quarterback situation is unknown. You have one good wide receiver. We know you got Chase Young, but he's not going to be able to score your touchdowns for you. Somebody's got to do that. So you're looking at that, and I think if I'm AP, which I'll ask you guys this too, but I think he finds another home here pretty quickly.
One place that I just thought of, and it's because, well, they just got rid of one back because, well, Austin Eckler is really good, but you're going to need a power back in the Los Angeles Chargers to compensate for the good pass back that Austin Eckler is. Just you're going to need a perfect 1-2 punch, and of course, I believe it is Justin Jackson who is right behind him, and he's a decent back. But I would want a guy like AP there who's got so much experience. I mean, with the offensive firepower that AP might still have left in the tank, I think that'd be perfect 1-2, and then maybe have Jackson come in just every once in a while.
I feel like the Dolphins might want to give him a shot. The reason why, we don't know what's going on with their backfield. They don't either.
Yeah.
They were obviously rumored immediately to try to go out and grab Alvin Kamara, so they're definitely fishing for a running back. Now, I know there's a difference between Kamara and Adrian Peterson right now, but maybe he gives them some sort of a spark. I don't know. I think that he's going to find a team, though, but we do know this is another one of those situations. I love to compare him. We got AP, we got Frank Gore, we got LaShawn McCoy that keeps sticking around.
Is it becoming too much that the Chiefs have now gotten to the point where everyone thinks, should they add this person? Should they add this? Because that's what it was always like with the Patriots during their dynasty was, go up, pick up Randy Moss, pick up this, that, and the other, and that's when Leonard Fournette, it was Chiefs should go after him, and now it's should Chiefs go after Adrian Peterson? It's like, why?
Yeah, why?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
why
at this point? But think about it. If they hadn't, let's say they hadn't drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Dame did what he did and opted out. Would they have grabbed Leonard Fournette? Do you think that would have made sense?
Yeah.
I think so.
I think they would have offered.
Yeah.
Again, I think ultimately he went to Tampa Bay because he thinks he has a chance to win something there. But again, I don't know how much money he's making there. If he's taking a pay cut from some of the other offers, but the fact that no one traded for him, and no one pulled him off the waivers for $4 million means he's probably making less than $4 million.
$3.5 million, I believe, is what he got.
Yeah,
so.
finishing up that rookie deal.
Yeah. Sad news out of New England too. We talked about the receivers. Old Mohamed Sanu is saying bye-bye. He is no longer. That was a disaster from the beginning. I really think it was experience, but that was about it.
I still don't understand why they got him.
Because he was actually supposed to be the emergency quarterback.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that was Bill Belichick when they got him. He was like, "We're going to find something here with this," and one of those it just didn't quite pan.
Well, what should the Chiefs pick up Mohamed Sanu?
Yeah, you know who should? The Seahawks. They might as well just go grab. They're grabbing everyone else and the receiver.
What do you think about Gordon getting? I sent it to you yesterday.
Yeah.
Have you heard Levi? Josh Gordon possibly coming back, and obviously Seattle sounds like they've already talked with him of if he clears NFL protocol that they're going to re-sign him.
Yeah, I mean, if Josh Gordon's back, he's an athletic dude and he's a good wide receiver.
Yeah.
I don't mind having him back, especially on the deal they got him for.
In Seattle, you can smoke all the weed you want, and in the NFL, you can smoke all the weed you want. He's in a good spot.
And then he can smoke players on the field.
That's right. Hey, look, if Pete Carroll's saying, dude, if that helps you run faster or whatever, catch more balls, and you're not watching, so it's one of those things. But what does it do here? Does it hurt DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett in this situation? Because those two... I'm not saying they won't
I think
get
it might
targets.
impact Lockett. I don't think it'll impact. To me, I think DK was going to surpass Lockett this year or next year anyway.
I think it's a perfect 1-2-3 punch because you have a guy big, built like DK. He does have the speed behind him, but he's a big dude who can go get some balls. Tyler Lockett with all the speed. Josh Gordon's a perfect mix of both worlds.
If they keep Russell Wilson healthy, it's one of those that's really, really dangerous.
Love all the weapons. Where's the offensive line?
Yeah,
that's the
true.
running game.
Well,
healthy
Chris
running
Carson
game.
needs to stay healthy and take over. I mean,
and so
I think
does Penny.
I like the other guys.
Every running back and tight end in Seattle needs to stay healthy for them to really make a run this year.
And don't forget, Marshawn Lynch is on speed call, just like last time.
He's always ready to go when we get into the playoffs. So it'll be fine.
Speaking of places that Adrian Peterson could possibly get a phone call from.
We need Marshawn Lynch to come back so we can have all those old running backs. He's another great addition to that.
Just with some Skittles, please.
Yeah, that's all it's come. When we come back, we're going to get into a Fantasy Friday, talk a little bit about our top tight ends and wide receivers. That's next.
Levitating off the blacktop. Used to struggle getting started, now I can't stop. Used to be the quiet kid in the
This is the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler, Jason Oquist, Levi Peckinpah. Getting into our Fantasy Friday. You guys realize this is the last pre-Fantasy Friday, technically, since we have a game on Thursday next week in the NFL. So your Chiefs players, your Chiefs picks, and your Texans picks, you're going to be watching out for that. And we'll get into that a lot next week, too. Let's look into our top tight ends, who we have. We broke down running backs and quarterbacks last week. Let's get into our tight ends here. This is a position that we know is thin, but it's grown over the past few years with more talent, more young talent, and tight ends. The position has also evolved a little bit into, if you're just as good as a receiver, well, we can put you in this position too if you know how to block, right? So we can throw in there with the tight ends. We'll start with Levi giving us your number 5.
My number 5.
Your number 5 tight end in fantasy to grab.
Okay, since I can't put Darren Waller from 1 through 5, I'll just put him at number 5. Darren Waller stepped up last year for Oakland. He was their number 1 wide receiver in a core that was kind of barren. You were trying to get something going with Tyrell Williams or Hunter Renfrow, and you couldn't figure it out. Well, Darren Waller was your guy to go to, especially for Derek Carr. Just seemed to be a target every single night on a nightly basis. So I think that you're going to see a lot more of that as Las Vegas is trying to figure everything out, and it's weird saying Las Vegas Raiders. But I think Darren Waller, no matter what he's going to, I think he'll even maybe have a little bit more of a leap from last year in have a lot of great production over in Oakland.
You're telling me that
Or
he's not
Las
going to be in a
Vegas.
battle with Jason Witten for a tight end spot? Come on.
Going to take all his snaps.
Oh, all the snaps, yes.
I've got Waller at 5 as well. My thing, though, is I don't know if it's going to be a blessing or a curse, the fact that Tyrell Williams is out for the year. Because obviously that means there's no one to take some passes away, but that also means there's nobody for defenses to necessarily have to worry about in that wide receiver core. So maybe they can focus a little more on Waller. So I still think he's going to be a top 10 guy. It remains to be seen if he takes that level to where even double and triple teaming him because he's the only option in the passing game isn't enough because he's just that good.
Well, it's okay if Tyrell Williams goes out because that means more snaps for Henry Ruggs.
Yeah, Henry Ruggs is going to be. They need him to be a veteran as a rookie this year if they want success.
Ruggs and Renfro 1 and 2.
Yeah, Hunter Renfro.
Yeah,
man.
more reliable.
Wow, why does
Old reliable. He's like 2 years into the league.
He looks old.
When he spent like 7 years at Clemson, so that's why old reliable. Yeah.
The Perry Ellis.
That's right. He's the Perry Ellis of college football. My 5, it's different. It's not Darren Waller. It's in the same division. And that's Hunter Henry. I think he is going to be. Look, when Antonio Gates got out of his way, first of all, it was just like a Blake Jarwin situation. Kind of, he still had decent years, but he came a little bit out of his shell a little bit. He was featured a little bit more at that position. They just named Tyrod Taylor the starter in Los Angeles.
Then there's no way he's going to be a top 5.
The reason I say that is because I don't think that's going to last very long. And I think Justin Herbert is going to take over. And when I say long, I mean if the Chargers are smart and have any hopes of chasing the Chiefs in that division, it's let's go with our best option, which I still think is Justin Herbert. Give it a week, 2 3 at the max. They throw in Justin Herbert, but it doesn't matter. Tyrod Taylor can be the starter. We know they're not going to be that great throwing the ball deep down the field to start off with. Who's going to benefit from that other than Austin Eckler? I think my guy Hunter Henry is going to have a big-time year.
My brain's going to act like you said Darren Waller no matter what, so it's okay, whatever your fifth is.
All right. Well,
maybe it's because he has got Waller at his number 1.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
That's how it works.
He's way up there.
We're starting at 5. So number 4, I'm going with Mark Andrews.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, I got him up there because as we saw last year, if Hollywood Brown can't stay healthy, Andrews is going to be the guy, the option for Jackson. Obviously, they did bring in some talent in the draft as well, that in the passing game. But I mean, Mark Andrews is the next in line to be the next Kittle and Kelsey and stuff like that. And so we're already seeing that. And at one of these years, maybe this year, maybe next year, is where he finally takes a step to where he becomes the number 1 in my mind. So I'm going to put him at 4 because I think he has the potential of being the best tight end right now in the NFL.
Okay.
Hey, I'm right there with you. Mark Andrews at number 4. He is so talented, and like Jason was saying, whenever Hollywood Brown isn't open, or at some moments whenever they had Willie Snead on the field, you know who's open? Oh, Mark Andrews, 20 yards down the field, ready to catch a ball. He is what became Lamar Jackson's old reliable, and I feel like that's how it's going to be over the next couple of years, and I feel like he is on the cusp of taking that next step, like you're saying, to be the next Zach Ertz, Travis Kelce, George Kittle. Maybe this upcoming year is that breakout year.
Okay, you both have Mark Andrews, which is a solid pick. I'm going with Darren Waller at 4. Think, honestly, he could probably be borderline 3 after what happens this year because, yes, last year was so good, but when he's finding success, too, even in that offense, what will be the big kicker for me is when Mariota does take over that job, are they still going to be the stud that he is? And I believe that's going to be the case because the last report was Mariota's not a threat to Derek Carr for the starting position. Again, that's another situation in that division where we'll see how long that lasts because I don't think it's going to be that long. Derek Carr's time in Las Vegas is coming to an end really, really quickly, I believe. But Darren Waller is going to be the beneficiary. Crazy athletic. The height, it doesn't even matter. You go up and he's going to beat you anytime. He's going to be your check down option there. I love him at number 4.
It sounds like you and I probably have the same number 3 then, the way you just listed off those guys. I got Ertz.
Yeah.
I'm going with Ertz at 3 right now, but I'm also cautiously optimistic with him because he is getting to that point in his career where tight ends might start breaking down. Obviously, we saw him deal with some injuries last year, and the fact that you have a guy like Dallas Goedert there also puts some pressure on Ertz. So I still think he's a top 3 guy, but I almost feel like if he he drops out, it would be Goddard who jumps up to number 3 because I mean, that's, to me, easily, hands down, the best 1-2 combo at tight end. I think you've got 1 through 3 at Tampa Bay is pretty solid, but as far as top heavy, it's those guys. So right now I got Ertz at 3, but would not be surprised if it ultimately ended up being Dallas Goedert if Ertz starts seeing that end of the year or end of his career type of wear and tear start to show up.
Where it hurts, Zach Ertz at number 3 as well. I mean, that dude has been phenomenal over these past couple years. Injuries sometimes hindering Zach Ertz, but when he's on the field, he's remarkable. And, of course, the main thing that you got to worry about with him is Dallas Goedert is also a really good tight end, and that makes for the best 1-2 punch for tight ends. So with Philadelphia, you'll have to maybe try to split tight ends if you could and watch out for those. So, I mean, Zach Ertz is just so phenomenal. But, I mean, with Dallas Goedert right there, it's sometimes going to be hard, especially when it comes to fantasy, to pick which guy would you want to lean on for fantasy. And maybe they both get enough touches to where you don't have to worry about it. If that wide receiver core over Philadelphia is still having a hard time catching the ball, you might be able to rock with tight ends, either Ertz or Goddard.
I'll go ahead and let you both know right now, Zach Ertz is not in my top 5 for that reason. Because the last couple of years, I've been privileged enough to have Zach Ertz on my fantasy team once or twice here and there. The last couple of years, besides the injuries, because he did have those, Dallas Goedert got more of a chance to show what he can do. And I'm telling you right now, the Eagles see a 1A, 1B situation here with tight ends, which is not what you usually see with tight ends. You're going to have one that does most of the heavy lifting for most teams. They're seeing it as we're going to run multiple 2 tight end sets. We're going to get all this going to where they're both on some routes. It's going to be that type of thing. That's why I think Zach Ertz is a little iffy. He's going to get you production, but think about all the other issues they've got with Philadelphia too. Carson Wentz a little banged up coming into it. Jalen Reagor's now banged up. I mean, they've got so many, and that's going to be the thing, is that could ultimately end up paying off in the favor of these 2 tight ends. But if they decide to go with a hot hand situation here so they can make sure their receivers are good, sometimes it's going to be Dallas Goedert. I'm just telling you right now. And last year, too, we saw Zach Ertz was visibly frustrated. There were multiple times where when he was not on the field, and he was not happy about that. He wants to be your workhorse tight end. I'm not sure he's going to be that this year. That's why I have him out of my top 5.
Yeah, man, it stinks when you have great players. It's terrible when you have great players.
Yeah, especially for fantasy owners when there are multiple great players in the same team, right? That position, yeah. I'll go with my number 3, and that's Mark Andrews. I have him at the top 3. Why? Because last year, he was in a 3-man rotation for quite a while in Baltimore, and he was still way better than anybody else. Now, Hayden Hurst is a good tight end, but it didn't hold a candle to me when it came to Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews could be a wide receiver. I think that's the case, too. He developed a ton of early chemistry with Lamar Jackson, who we all know, and I've been the biggest advocate of putting pressure on him to throw the ball more and see if he can really do it in clutch third down situations. That's where Mark Andrews is going to benefit big time, because we all know Lamar Jackson is going to take off the ball on first down. He's going to get you yards. You're going to see a ton of times, if it's truly Lamar Jackson's year to be, and I know MVP and all that, but this year to show, can do it on third down consistently. Guess who's going to be catching all your third down passes? Mark Andrews, and that's going to be a ton of balls. So I have him number 3.
Alrighty, and I guess that means now we go with number 2, which
we know who the top 2 are. It's which order do we have them? Obviously, the top 2 are going to be Kelsey and Kittle. Yeah. Which order? So let's just who's your number 1, number 2? Since we know how it's going to go.
Part of me was also really wanted to just be extremely jokey right there and just pull a random name out and just mess with you guys. But what I've got George Kittle number 1, and I got Travis Kelce number 2.
Wrong. But go ahead.
I mean, here's the thing. They're both great tight ends, and if you have either of them, whatever way, if you got Kelce 1, Kittle 2, I don't think you're wrong. They're just both.
Because we're not.
What are you saying? Explain your reasoning, because you got 2 people that are right in the room and one that's not, so go ahead.
Okay. But with the way George Kittle operates, it's just more of a all-around game compared to
we're talking fantasy football.
Yeah, that's true.
Blocking for the running backs does not get you points in fantasy football.
Don't give you the number 1 tight end in the league to you. Give your top fantasy tight end.
Yeah, but also when you look at it with their wide receiver core basically being dusted because of injuries, there's only one guy I can say I rely on. It's not Brandon Ayuk, it's George Kittle.
And it was the same last year until Emmanuel Sanders started coming on the scene and Deebo Samuel got more involved, right?
Right, but I mean now I mean, this season hasn't even started, and their wide receiver core is down to just a couple guys. I mean, yeah, Brandon Ayuk will be good to look at for wide receiver. I'm not gonna go and say anything crazy about that, but if I'm looking for a reliable guy, it's George Kittle every day of the week and then some.
Okay. I think we already know.
Yeah, we know how we're going. You go first. Explain why you're going with Travis Kelce number one.
It'll be real quick. It'll be real quick. I won't take too much time on this. I promise. That's because I look at quarterbacks. Okay, quarterbacks play a huge role in this type of position with your tight end. Not only that, but when you have a guy like Travis Kelce, who you even have Tyreek Hill on the team. And Travis Kelce, he's Patrick Mahomes' favorite target, and he's a tight end. So he's going to – you can count down the list of wide receivers, and everyone's going to catch balls for the Chiefs. Still, Travis Kelce to me is at the very top of that list, which isn't the case for a lot of tight ends. But we all know – I know the age is getting up there too and everything. But, man, last year, even when he was hurt, think about those playoff games. He wasn't 100%, and he was making big-time plays. He was running through people. He was fighting through a really sore hamstring. So I think he's got a chance to come back and be that number one guy. Let me say this, and I've made this point a bunch. I love George Kittle. Like, if a guy comes to me off the street and says, I got George Kittle and Travis Kelce as my top two tight ends and don't even tell me what order, I say that's fine with me because they're right there with each other. George Kittle, to your point, Levi, yeah, he's going to be the beneficiary of everything Jimmy Garoppolo does because look at quarterbacks, though. Jimmy G, there were a lot of times last year, and I had George Kittle on my fantasy team last year, and it was really fun. I traded for him, got him. That's how much I wanted him. But there was a lot of times last year when this wasn't just due to receivers, this was due to Jimmy Garoppolo's decision-making where he missed opportunities to hit George Kittle, who could not handle – I mean, it was a mismatch, anyone trying to cover him, especially one-on-one. There's going to be a lot of zone defense run against George Kittle this year.
that what you just said was the whole thing that they've been saying all season long, especially in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Because of Jimmy Garoppolo and missing easy targets.
Yeah. Well, my reasoning besides that, obviously quarterback play is certainly a factor, but keep in mind that Travis Kelce, obviously he had better stats than Kittle last year. That's already known.
Yeah.
But we also have to keep in mind two other factors. Patrick Mahomes missed 3 games. And Kelce still ended up with better stats.
Yeah.
And for half of the season, there was no Tyreek Hill for defenses to focus in on. They were able to focus in on Travis Kelce. They were able to hunker down, not worry about the lid being taken off by those guys. Mecole Hardman will also add to them trying to extend the field, thus creating more space in the middle for Kelce. So while he may be aging, he is definitely going to benefit from a healthy Mahomes, a healthy Tyreek Hill, because he's already back practicing again. We thought we were worried that groin injury might impact him going into the season. He's already back practicing. So for me, it is the components around him just elevate him above Kittle because defenses are going to have to figure out, do we want to give up a 60-yard bomb to Mecole Hardman or Tyreek Hill, or just be happy with the dink and dunk to Travis Kelce? And then the fact of the matter is, because you guys do points per reception, PPR, again, he had 20 more receptions than Kittle last year as well. Mm-hmm. So that's going to – so even if he's not getting as many yards, he's going to get a lot of looks short yardage-wise to benefit that PPR setting as well.
It's because he does such a good job of getting open is what it is at the tight end position. Even if they run any defense against him, he's going to find a hole. Yeah, you give credit to Patrick Mahomes for being patient and waiting, but at the same time – and that's what I think George Kittle needs to do a little bit better of is finding ways to get open. When he does catch the ball, you're going to run through 3 defenders before you bring him down anyways. Let me say it this way. Yeah, we're talking PPR and everything too, but straight touchdowns idea here, that's where I take these two and I toss them up. Because
that's fair, because last year they both had 5 touchdowns only.
Because and those should, I think, go up. When you look at red zone opportunities, if you're not looking those 2 tight ends ways multiple times in the red zone, then you're doing something wrong, and that's what's got to happen this year.
I like how I just had like a little setback moment. I just let y'all have your Chiefs talk. I'll join in a little bit. It feels like on a lot of occasions, and of course, the Chiefs have a plethora of wide receivers and great targets, but it feels like if I need the reliable, if I'm looking for Mr. Reliable, it is Travis Kelce. Patrick Mahomes, it's like a laser. It's like a telepathy type of thing. It's like, I need somebody to catch the ball. I got you. Go down and he can do anything and everything to get open. He even though I was talking George Kittle is the best overall, I think when it comes to whether it's route running or just being able to do a little bit more playmaking, I think Travis Kelce's a lot better.
Yeah, and to go with that, because Garoppolo's not able to extend the play, obviously you don't have the mind meld like you said that you see with Mahomes, because if you go back and remember, one of the most exciting, thrilling plays of the playoffs when Mahomes just drags that back foot just barely and just kind of chucks the ball back the other way.
Yep.
It was to Travis Kelce breaking off his route, standing there in the end zone.
Yeah, the chemistry is insane. I think that George Kittle, though, we have to remember, he just got paid. He's going to live up to that contract.
And let's also keep in mind that Kelce should have actually had 6 touchdowns last year if in week 1 or week 2 Mahomes didn't try another no-look pass and airmailed a wide-open Travis Kelce.
That was really bad. That was one of the best Patrick Mahomes hater moments. So, look, he tried to do it again, and look what happened.
Oh, yeah, and Kelce called him out for it, and Mahomes said, never again.
Yeah, he set him straight. It was good. All right, we come back. We'll have just a few minutes. We're going to get into our wide receivers. That's next.
Well, I'm not trying to get in the way. Minding my own, got nothing to say about nobody. That's right, nobody. Don't shake my tree, don't rattle my cage. You and me will be on the same page. Got no trouble. Don't make no trouble. Yeah, you bet.
Welcome back, Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. We're wrapping it up here really quickly. We are going to stuff it in the face here real quick of all the listeners. We're going to throw wide receivers out there, and what we're going to do is discuss more of it next week. Yeah. We're just going to give you our top 5 really here, and then throw some Big 12 news your way, and then we're out of here. So you're starting us off, Levi.
All right, I'll go from 5 to 1. Number 5, Tyreek Hill. Number 4 is Devontae Adams. Number 3, I wish it was number 1, but other things that I'll talk about next week. We'll get into that. Nuke Hopkins, DeAndre Hopkins is number 3 for me. Number 2, Julio Jones, and number 1, Michael Thomas.
Okay, I think that's fair.
No Amari?
No, Mari. Not yet.
How tough was that for you?
That honestly, that was a lot tougher than you think it was.
You're a better non-homer than I am.
Oh boy,
we'll go with you, bro.
Oh boy. All right, my number 5. I'm going straight up with Devontae Adams at 5. They're like, they got another receiver for Green Bay, and we might be talking a little something different there, but we're not. Number 4 for me, Julio Jones. Moves back a little bit. I don't have him in the top 3. Maybe my red colors are about to show a little bit. I don't know. It's definitely possible. I'm number 3, right?
Yep.
Yeah, number 3, Chris Godwin. I think he's going to have a big-time season. I mean big-time with Tom Brady there. Number 2, Tyreek Hill, for obvious reasons. And number 1, Michael Thomas, I think is kind of undisputable.
I'm going, I guess, out on a limb here. According to you guys, number 5. I'm going Cooper Kupp.
I love Cooper Kupp.
We got to keep in mind that he was a top 5 wide receiver last year, and again they got rid of Brandon Cooks.
Yeah.
So there's some looks that he's going to probably get heading back his way as well.
People would argue for that is if they said Cooper Kupp, they would even throw Robert Woods in that.
Right.
That's
right.
What I would.
I think Woods is going to be up there as well. But again, we talked about the talented punch in Tampa Bay. They have it there as well.
Oh yeah.
The reason I don't have Kupp higher is because quarterback play.
It's on Jared Goff.
Right.
Yeah.
But Kupp's good enough and gets enough looks that ultimately I've got him as a top 5 guy.
I agree.
I've got Godwin at number 4. I'm going to go Julio at number 3. Again, with Austin Hooper leaving, I think that I originally had Julio and Godwin switched, but with Hooper leaving, obviously there's some numbers that are going to go towards Julio and Calvin Ridley. But again, Godwin. So I have Godwin behind because of how many more weapons there are in Tampa Bay. So that's why I interchangeable to me. Okay. Godwin and Julio right there. Okay. I've got Tyreek number 2. I've argued he's the best, but Michael Thomas clearly right now is the best based on numbers last year. Again, Tyreek Hill still finished as a top 10 wide receiver last year despite missing 6 games.
Yeah.
You can't.
If he's healthy, he could be fighting for 1.
And again, when you have the best quarterback in the league throwing you the ball and you're the fastest man in football, that bodes well for the opportunity of being a number 2 wide receiver in all of the NFL.
That's fair. I like those rankings all the way around. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Cooper Kupp. He's knocking on the door for me. I love Cooper Kupp. He's a great wide receiver.
Yeah.
We'll break more of them down next week instead of just giving you. We'll get into that. Let's get into some Big 12 here real quick. They're trying to do the classic old Friday night news dump.
Yeah, literally just sent out from the Big 12 conference. They have announced their threshold for cancellations of football games. The minimum number of players required to play a game has been set at 53. The number is based on the entire roster, including all scholarship and walk-on players. So it's conceivable that half of your roster could be the walk-ons that you have to go out there with. But I think the important thing to note is there is also an additional minimum threshold for available players at specific positions, and not every position, only at 3 specific positions. Offensive line, there must be at least 7 available offensive linemen. Interior defensive line, you must have 4 eligible players. And at quarterback, 1. So obviously you have to have at least 1. So even that means for Oklahoma State, who currently has, I think, 6 guys on roster, if one of those is healthy, and it's not Spencer Sanders or all these other guys, if it's Sean Taylor, you're still eligible to play.
Yeah.
So that's where they're going with. That's the threshold that they are setting. This follows up with teams falling below any of these benchmarks based on game week test results could still elect to play as scheduled if so desired. Otherwise, upon approval by the commissioner, the game would be declared a no contest if it cannot be moved to a later date. So they will attempt to move it to, I'm sure, assume to those open dates or before the Big 12 title game. Otherwise, it won't be a forfeit if you don't have the eligible players to be able to play that game.
What I like from this here real quick is just the Big 12 basically saying that, hey, not only are we going to play, but even if something happens, we're going to play, right? We're going to find a way. And I think that's fair. When you heard Bob Bowlesby say initially when they asked him about the number, he's like, I don't have a number right now.
Right.
He talked about and kind of hinted, even if it's basically half your team, you could still technically play, right?
Yeah.
If it's not a certain position.
Yeah, because there was a lot of speculation of it was going to be a number based on all the positives around the entire league. Like, so even if OSU had nothing tested positive, but Kansas State had 30, that could impact all of the games. But now they're clarifying it. It will be basically a case-by-case, team-by-team. If you can't field 53, and if you can't field 7 linemen, offensive linemen, 4 interior defensive linemen, and 1 quarterback, and that's the interesting thing, you can opt out of not playing. It's not like it's instantly canceled, but obviously if you don't have a quarterback, I'm guessing you're not wanting to play.
Yeah. It's going to be high risk, right, Levi, here? If you basically what you're doing is saying that we're going to play with all of our guys, it's actually going to be tough for you guys to end up missing a game,
right?
Unless you just have a crazy outbreak, right?
Yeah, and I loved how it was the true essentials, like you were saying. It's your lineman and your quarterback. It's the true essentials of the game that are broken down. Because if you're out a couple special players, like it's a wide receiver or running back, that's okay. But as long as the interior linemen are there, that's when things get a little chippy.
Yeah. That's going to do it for us. Good stuff, guys, as always. That's Jason Elmquist over there. Levi Peckinpah, appreciated as always. We're going to get you on to the high school football preview show here, and then we got Perry football coming up at 6:30. You can catch that on 105.1 and the Triple Play Sports Radio app. I'm Patrick Wheeler. Everybody have a fantastic Labor Day weekend. See you back here on Tuesday.
Real quick, TCU SM game scheduled for next week has been postponed due to outbreak. Just came across right now. TCU SMU non-conference game has been postponed.
All right, well, there's one down. Unfortunately,
see that.
Yeah, we really do. We were going to leave you on good news. Oh man.
Sorry.
All right, we'll see you next week.